Thank you for being here. This is the session where you're going to hear from some of our sterling textbook winners. And this was a great idea that Al Trujillo and Dave Dillon came up with on the program committee. And I think it's nice that they put this together. I hope you'll enjoy the session.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Al Trujillo, and my colleague Dave Dillon and I are presenting some of the special features of TAA award-winning textbooks. And we came up with this idea because I think as textbook authors, we're all looking for ideas to incorporate into our textbooks. And it might be nice to hear from these award-winning textbooks. By the way, they all 26 of them are in your program. Right in the middle of your program, it has pictures of the covers of all of the award-winning textbooks that were awarded this year. And so we asked a handful of these award-winning authors to talk about their book and talk about what makes their book so special. So the presentations that we have today, this is kind of like a panel. We'll have the presenters present their materials, do a short presentation about their books and what makes them so special. And then if you have specific questions to that particular author, we can field some questions at that time, and then at the end we'll open it up to just general questions that you might be wondering about for these different textbooks. So let me advance a slide here. So today's presentations are from the book Hotel, Restaurant, and Travel Law, A Preventive Approach by Karen Morris and on behalf of her and her co-authors. That's the first one. Then Technology and Innovation in Adult Learning by Kathleen King. And then last, Calculus for the AP course by Michael Sullivan and Kathleen Miranda. So we're going to have them each present some of the outstanding features of their textbooks. So let's first go to Karen Morris's presentation. So I'll ask her to take the microphone here.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm thrilled to be among this group, thrilled to be an award winner. Like you, I worked hard on the textbook, and it's really nice when there is positive reinforcement for that. So the clicker. Yes, thank you. This book is now in its 8th edition. I came on in the 4th edition, so this was my 5th edition. These were the prior 4 editions of this book. We just heard about contract rights. One that I recommend is that you have a say in the cover. So there's none of these covers did I have much of a say in. I've gone through 4 different publishers. One of them did give us some say, but none of these 4 would have been ones that I would have chosen. So the 2 were published by Del Mar. There was one in there by Thompson, and then Cengage. And in bankruptcy, it says Del Mar. I'm sorry, it should say Cengage. Cengage discontinued a couple of the lines. I know they discontinued nursing. They also discontinued hospitality. So I went shopping and was fortunate, and Kendall Hunt became my new publisher. And and this is the book that won the award and that Kendall Hunt has published. And my co-authors are new. Some of you may have met Steen Sliegerless yesterday, and the 3rd author is teaching in Europe this summer. Some of the features, which is the focus of this presentation, the chapter introduction, which includes learning outcomes and key terms. Nothing really new about this, though in the prior editions, I had the key terms at the end of the chapter and didn't have learning outcomes. Kendall Hunt has a format of requiring these 2 features at the beginning of the chapter. So all of the Kendall Hunt books have that similarity. And I like those features. And I think that the key terms are well placed in the beginning as opposed to the end. There is a summary at the end of each chapter. I don't think it's something new, but it is a feature that I think students appreciate. And then This feature is the one that is unique, I believe, and originated with my first edition, and each publisher liked it, and it's kept in, and that is preventive law tips for managers. And it's in effect, a summary, but paragraph by paragraph, it identifies or recaps important issues and advises the reader, who are future managers of restaurants and hotels, on how to avoid those legal pitfalls, what action to take in order to prevent the likelihood of a lawsuit relating to that particular issue. And each chapter has probably, and I appreciate you can't see this, the book is available to look at out in the hallway. Each chapter has probably 8 to 10 of these law tips for managers. And the thrust of the book is preventive, how to prevent lawsuits. That preventive is right there in the title, a preventive approach. Hospitality, hotel, restaurant, travel law, a preventive approach. And these preventive law tips for managers carries through that theme. And then there are 3 categories of questions. And this, again, also may not be unique, but I think that it is an important feature of the book, and it came from my first publisher, which was Del Mar, which was a wonderful niche publisher. Hospitality law is a great field. It's not economics 101. It's not business law. It is a finite field, and it really takes a publisher focus, I believe, on niche publishing. Del Mar was wonderful in that regard. Cengage was not. But the Del Mar prompted me to include 3 levels of questions. So there's the review questions, which are pretty much rote questions. You might get there from memorizing material. Then 2 additional categories, discussion questions and application questions, each taking further steps down the road of critical thinking, requiring the student to look at the material, work with the material, think about the material, and apply the material. So the 3 levels of questions, and what the level is clearly laid out for the professor, who can choose, of course, which questions he or she wants to use, and the student can test themselves as they feel the need to do that. Then there are some charts, tables and charts as needed depending on the material. I think this one has to do with alcohol laws. Hospitality law includes a chapter on alcohol, and the state's laws vary, and this chart includes that. Then this is, to me, really exciting about Kendall Hunt, and I'm very appreciative. Every edition until this was black and white without pictures, except maybe some picture on the introductory page of each chapter. Kendall Hunt has contracts with one of the picture archive organizations, and the name escapes me. But we were told, go there, pick anything you want, tell us where you want to place it, and the book comes out, it's in color, and it's got pictures. So we're thrilled with that. We think that it really helps, and of course Robert Christofferson is the pro on pictures and how important pictures are to illustrate what's in your material. We never had the option, I never had the option of pictures before, so I'm very happy with the pictures. This one, an alcohol picture, and on the right is one involving safes and hotel safes, a lot of legal issues involving property that is brought to a hotel and is lost or stolen. This book, I have been really thrilled with the recognition. So I think it was 2012, it won a McGuffey for longevity. And it, again, at that point, it was in the 7th edition. I wasn't sure the 8th edition was going to come out because I did get caught up in the Cengage bankruptcy, but feel that I was very lucky, landed well. And it was a whole new publisher and 2 new co-authors. So I felt it was fair game to resubmit it for the Texty Award this year, and we were thrilled to be among the winners. Here's another feature of the book that I worked hard on, and I loved in the announcement yesterday, when you read what the author said, this was included, which is that it was written in a way that you didn't have to be a lawyer to understand, and you could, I'm paraphrasing, but understand well the material. And great. And that was really important, and is an important feature of any book, that the material be presented in a way that's easily understood. Our students, of course, are not, in my case, lawyers, and many of them are taking one course. They're not aspiring to be lawyers. They're aspiring to be successful hotel and restaurant managers. And to do that, they need a piece of law. So I want them to be able to understand and attain useful information as they go forward in their career. And also, in the process, protect their guests from trips and falls, from otherwise interacting with the law, having various issues befall them while they are visiting. So that's the extent of what I have to say. I welcome questions.
Is your book sold in an electronic digital version as well, and was it with Cengage either?
I do not know. This was a offer. This is hard copy only, I believe. Mm-hmm. The ancillary, the teacher's information, the book that goes with it, the ancillary is for the professor, and there is only one ancillary with it. When you're in a smaller market, mm-hmm. Publishers don't support a lot of ancillaries. That is digital. When I was shopping the book, the other publishers said they would commit to, and I thought this was interesting, one more hard copy edition. Beyond that, it could be only digital, that they wouldn't commit to doing it hard copy. I do not think that this is digital. Any other questions?
Thanks, Karen. You mentioned the importance of having say in the cover. Is that something that ordinarily happens at the time of the contract?
Yes. If it's not in the contract, you don't have that right. You can speak up, but they'll say, we've got marketing people, we've got our artistic people. If we go back to the cover, can you go to the first? There was, Kendall Hunt really has been wonderful as a publisher. And the one before that shows the actual title. Oh, doesn't it show the book? Maybe it's the next one. Go one. There it is. Oops. There it is. We're working at cross purposes. Kendall Hunt was wonderful and wanted our input and sort of recognized, wow, we're the experts on the content. And yes, we're not marketers, but there was a third picture. I can't remember what it was, but there are sort of 3 distinct pictures here. And there was a third one. It might, I might have been a housekeeper, somebody, a woman dressed in a housekeeping outfit who cleans the rooms, which no question is part of the hospitality field, but not what we're training for at the college, or at least in the hotel and restaurant management courses. So we asked that be changed, and they were thrilled to do it. Very happy, recognized our issue, no problem. They presented us all the drafts before it went to print. So it's wonderful having a great publisher. Any others? But to answer the question, other publishers in the past, when I had issues with the cover, they did not welcome my input or want it or take it. Okay. Thank you.
Let's have a round of applause for presenter. Karen did remind me of a couple things I wanted to say. The books, if you want to have a closer look at them, they're out in the hallway, just out the doors there around to the left. And they are all winners of the Textbook Excellence Award. First two presenters for college level edition, and the third group of presenters for high school edition. So let us move on to our next presentation. And this is by Kathleen King about the book Technology and Innovation in Adult Learning.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Al. There's a handout that's coming around. It's just the outline of the slides so that you can follow along. And we lost the screen. Thank you. Thank you. It was. What happened? This room's having trouble today. Okay, so let me get my handout so we can keep moving. So you have on your handout, let's see, you see this little card up in the corner? Here's a tip from a textbook author or a book author. It's actually my 33rd published book somehow. I don't understand, but, I make little business cards. I use Vistaprint, very inexpensive to make these little business cards. And then I create a bit.ly, you know, bit.ly, the website. You take a long URL and it makes it real short. So that's the URL that takes you to a web page where my publisher, Josie Bass, has set up a 25% promo code. So people can purchase the book at a 25% discount. And so that's a great little promotional piece that I don't have to carry big stuff around with me, and it's a little card that I can give people. And so I put in an image of the cover on there. And talking about covers, it is a big deal to us, right, Karen? We want attractive covers. We want covers that are interesting to people. And I always negotiate that. I have been so blessed. Every one of my publishers has always involved me in it. It has always been in the contract. This is actually like the 5th or 6th version of this cover, and I actually took a couple of previous covers and merged them together, and the editor was, yes, I totally agree with you, Kathy, this works. And so that's how we came up with this cover. But this is a very unique situation. I was invited to write this book because the adult learning field is a growing field. It's about how adults learn throughout our lifespan. And it might be informal learning, it might be formal learning like this, or in college, but it could be you're learning a new program on your computer, or you're learning how to use the automated checkout at Home Depot, right? It could be any of those things. And so adult learning spans so many areas, and there's a lot of master's and doctoral programs now in adult learning, and I'm an adult learning specialist. And I'm also a techie. I used to teach technology and engineering in a previous lifespan. And I'm one of the unique people in this field that combines the two and constantly talks about that at the adult learning conferences. So they needed a book to fit the course that now is in all these programs, and they were having to use several books, and none of them really addressed the issues they needed. So they said, Kathy, will you do it? And I was like, that's a big charge, because they wanted me to cover all the adult learning theories and connect them with technology and innovative practices. And that's what I do, but it took a lot of research to do it and accomplish it. Definitely the longest book project I've ever done. Also, I try to get all my books peer-reviewed before they go to press. That's something I do as an academic, and it provides a better product, but it lengthens the process. I was very fortunate, and they're usually people I don't know. I go through the publisher. How many people peer review their books before they go to press? Not everybody, but quite a few. Great. They had a lot to say, a real lot to say, and I took it to heart. The publisher, the editor made very clear, Kathy, you don't have to do any or all of this, but I felt they were making good points. And I ended up with, I'll be honest with you, a 13-page Excel spreadsheet at about 10-point font of edits to make. That's a lot of edits, right? But I felt I was going to get a better product. So I think that's a very important part of thinking about special features of a textbook. Who is giving you that peer review? How are you incorporating it? How are you making those judgment calls? And what is your publisher expecting of you? This book also definitely has a dual audience. That's not easy to write for either. It's very important, and I harp on this a lot, is keeping your audience in mind when you're writing. And so it's being written for educators of adult learners, so the teachers, but also an adult learner can pick it up and say, oh, this is how I live my life and how I have to continue to learn. So I'm trying to address both of those audiences at the same time. The premise of the book is that not only is our world changing constantly, but we have to constantly be engaged in learning to be able to keep up with it, to survive. And that requires a transformative perspective and a way to cope with that. And so rather than just communicating, do this, do that, do the other, I'm embedding a process and trying to help people capture a process through all of the examples, scenarios, and what I'm talking about in the book. So as they go through it, they are changed themselves. Their worldview, their perspective is transformed so that they can approach life and learning in a different way and have some new, what I call, coping strategies for the rapid and incessant change around us. Just what people had said about your book, Karen, accessible writing, so very important for the audience that I was writing for, staying away from technical jargon, the jargon of our field, so that a variety of people, wide variety, can understand. Really important for me because I'm talking to these adult learning teachers and adult learners who are not techies, and I am a techie. And so whenever I do a technology presentation, in my head I'm translating from Italian to English. It's from tech language to everyday language. I had to constantly do that in what I was writing. And then the big piece that I do in a lot of my work, my books that I write, is to try to have cases and engaging strategies and activities for people. And this I carried forward in this as a textbook. Outstanding features, engaging the readers in understanding and applying the content. It's built right into every chapter. And this little screenshot on the right is actually from the publisher's website, kind of like ancillaries, but very simple ones. We created PDFs that show you where all the strategies are in the whole book, so that if you remember one by name or topic, then you can find it. The same for the activities, the figures, the tables, and those are all uploaded so that instructors and readers can find them. They even posted a sample chapter online, which I really appreciated. It's very much a comprehensive engagement of theory and practice. We talk about that a lot, but it really is. Here's an example of scenario. I am a little bit scenario crazy. I employ this technique a lot. So without even being aware of it, most people experience tacit learning through their family or communities. The Howard family had gathered for a Sunday night dinner. Uncles, aunts, The groaning board groaned from the weight of potluck casseroles and divine desserts. Aunt Jen was the matriarch. Cousin Gerald was excited about the used car he was considering. Family pitched in with informal character and business references, strategies for using online reports, checking the VIN online, and more were enmeshed in these often hilarious accounts. Roberta, Gerald's spouse, found herself thinking about how different this experience was from her own family. Here, the family was like a coaching team. Informal learning, but the sort of thing that we encounter day to day in different environments. And important because I'm trying to help people see you're not outside of the loop. You are doing this every day. Keep your antennas up. You are continuing to learn. Bring this into your world. process it as learning. A lot of visuals. I know that I work with my doc students constantly, even in their dissertations and their research proposals, using visuals as a way to communicate to the reader, but also to help process what you're thinking about as the writer. It works both ways. Even some cartoons, and like somebody said last night, my wife was the cartoonist. She has that talent. Maybe that should be a requirement for spouses of authors. I don't know. I know being a proofreader is also helpful, but a lot of models I use and illustrations. Screenshots, getting permission always from the websites. And then real life problem solving, because that's what this is all about. How are you solving the problems that technology is creating around you every day? And so we're healthcare, employment, workplace, technology literacy, and also aging issues and child rearing across the board. And I included not just the traditional activities like the questions that you were talking about, the different levels of questions. There are different types of activities. So if an individual was reading it or if it was being used in a class, activities, people could pick which ones were appropriate for them. Time for questions at all?
How do you focus on two different audiences, the instructor and the student?
Part of it is with the strategies and the activities, making sure that they're relevant to both, right? So some of the activities will fit some of that group, some won't. And then making sure the language is in between, right? So I'm not just speaking to teachers, right? I'm talking about adult learning, okay? And sometimes I talk to the adult learner particularly. Sometimes I talk about classes. Your preface, you explain what you're doing. Yeah. Thank you. That's a good question.
Do you design most of your own illustrations? And if so, what do you use to do them?
Some of them I do. But then the publisher also took some of my illustrations and then professionally redid them. So each chapter, I had this architectural theme for each unit within the book, each set of chapters, each section. And they redid those and really ramped up my conceptual piece that I had created. But tables, charts, basic figures like Venn diagrams, I mostly use PowerPoint. You know what I love inside of the Microsoft system is, because I'm a PC person, not a Mac, is the smart figures. That gives you all those different shapes and figures based on conceptually how you see ideas fitting together. It also helps stimulate for me, how do those pieces fit together? And that's helping my thinking process and helping the reader when they see them as well. I have farmed out images in the past a couple of times and had independent graphic artists do them. For your tech book, screenshots are really important.
You had a list of activities that you noticed on the publisher's website. There was a list of activities, and it looks like you have a lot of case studies in this.
What's that?
You had on the slide that had what was on the publisher's website, there was a list of activities in a PDF, and it also looks like you've got sort of a case study perspective going. Could you talk a little bit about, do you create all the activities and the case studies? Could you talk a little bit about sort of what your process is for coming up with sort of new and innovative case studies and activities?
I'm a professor, I'm a teacher, I'm adult, and I'm also an adult educator by training, right? And so I'm constantly, that's how I teach. And I'm constantly thinking, how do I connect this to real life? How do I create a situation that they have to solve to apply the content we're learning? So it's really very easy for me to just spin these out. And I look at what are the objectives I'm trying to accomplish in that section. And let me think about everyday situation people can relate to. Large group of people, not just a subset. So that's important. Well, another tricky thing is names. If you ever look at any of my books, this is a funny thing to do. You'll see my family names through them, like Jen. That's really my Aunt Jen. Okay, that name. The situation isn't at all, but I also go through different cultural groups, and I try to represent all different cultural groups in the names that are chosen in the scenario, so that people can see themselves. I started doing that a long time ago, before a lot of people did, and the publishers were giggling at me. And I said, no, this is important. This is very important. And activities, it's from, that's one of those tacit things for me as an instructor. That's the way I teach, is with a lot of activities and engagement. So I'm looking at my objectives. I'm looking at how can I help them with, a lot of the times, critical thinking and problem solving, and rolling those together. But that does take a lot of work, but that's one of the most fun parts for me, is creating all of those, bringing it alive, what I'm writing about. And that's why I'm doing it, because people love the scenarios. What are you doing? You're telling them a story. It's a story. Everybody loves to learn through stories. And so if I start every chapter with a story and then weave more stories in and refer to the story, you're selling. They're just pulled into the chapters with those, and so why not make it easier to read and more memorable, for people?
Thank you. Let's have a nice round of applause for Kathleen King. And our last group of presenters will be presenting about the book Calculus, second edition for the AP course. And this is Mike Sullivan and Kathleen Miranda. And they'll be doing their presentation jointly here. So let me turn it over to them. So there's the clicker. And are you the... Okay. All right. Sounds good.
All right. Good morning. I'm Mike Sullivan.
And I'm Kathleen Miranda. And first, before we even start, we want to thank TAA again for recognizing the book as being worthy of a textie.
AP courses are part of the high school curriculum, but they're regulated by the College Board. For AP textbooks, they require a college level book and certain content requirements. Now, Kathleen and I have written the college book, so we had that, and with the exception of about one or two items, we had the content. So the challenge was, how do we transform the book into an AP book?
We met the challenge by first taking the AP, taking the AP curriculum framework for Calculus A, B, and BC, and looking at all their objectives, their big ideas, their learning, their enduring understandings, the takeaways, the learning objectives, what they were going to assess, and the essential knowledge, the skills you needed for the assessment. We had a head start. Our college book was written with learning objectives. So what we did was we added any new objectives that we were missing. In section 5.3, the college book originally only had 2 objectives. AP wanted the interpretations, so we added 2 more objectives. Then the next thing we did is we tweaked any of the objectives that didn't quite align, or the learning, or the essential skills that weren't really AP, to make an AP book. We then added new features. We kept the features from the old text, from the college text, that made the book student-friendly and teacher-friendly. So we kept the consistent and concise writing style, the annotated worked examples, the now work feature. It's okay, it's not up there anyway, so I can talk. The learning features, and the need to reviews just in time with references to back pages, and the chapter projects. But we added AP Insights, little screens that gave an AP style, you could turn it. Next one, to the right. We used the AP wording that we wouldn't have used in a college book, left ream on some, right ream on some. We said, hey, we're in Big Idea 3 now. We also said, this topic is only tested on the BC exam. Half the students only take the AB exam. Okay? We also added AP problems at the end of every section of the book. They all are back referenced. If you can't read it, but these little red squares over here, back reference the student to the page of a worked example that's similar to the AP problem. There are calc clips in some of the problems, not all of the problems, which give an alternate problem worked out on a whiteboard for a student. You can move it. We then, at the end of each chapter, added AP review problems from the chapter. Each of these problems are supplemented with a video that actually does the solution. And the videos are accessible on the website of the publisher for the book.
Now, you might remember the big ideas. So once we finished the big idea 1, we created an examination for the student to take that replicates the exam of the AP. We did the same after big idea 2. And then we gave exams after the course was over for the AB part and for the BC part. Now, you may notice, you may notice that that all of this stuff has a green screen behind it. And that's very intentional. You know, when you're trying to sell a book, that what most people do is they just do a page flip. You often wonder, what are they doing going through a book like that? But they do a page flip. You do a page flip in this book, you're going to see a lot of green. And that means you've got an AP book from us. AP courses are high school courses, and so you have to have a lot of other ancillary materials to sell in high school. We're fortunate that our publisher, Bedford, provided all of these.
I'm sorry, I'll stand over here. Okay. First thing we have an unparalleled teacher's edition. It's a wraparound. It includes alternate problems. It includes every answer on the page. It gives, it also has a timing, so a pacing guide. So if you're teaching AP, AB, they give you certain days to do certain sections of the book. If you're teaching BC, it's more accelerated. They have a second one. They're called the blue pages, and in the beginning of each chapter, there are blue pages. Also, a teacher gets a resource guide, and it's a flash drive. It's got worksheets on it. It's got more examples, more alternative examples. And then finally, there's a CD, an Exam View BC, which has 1,000 more AP-like problems. Throughout the textbook, more than 800 AP problems. Within the teacher's exam view has another 1,000 AP type problems. And by the way, we had lots of input on our cover.
I can do it. So in closing, I would recommend to those of you who have textbooks in college that have parallel AP courses to maybe consider getting another book written. And if you do decide that, please give Bedford a shot at it. They're dedicated AP salespeople.
And publishers.
Thank you.
In making up all these problems for the AP course, were you using exactly the same problems that they were using on exams, or you made up similar types of problems to address the issue?
I took every released AP test I could find. I went through every review book that I could find. I kind of, I organized them, which problems were tested most. I categorized them per chapter, and then Mike and I made up problems.
I see.
And we wrote them in the style of AP with the most of them are multiple choice, because every free response question by College Board is published.
I see.
And that's how we did it. They're all original problems.
I'm wondering too, because it seems to me you have to engage the student with some of this, and calculus, like other math courses, is dry bones to a lot of people. And so do you write the problems engaging the student with examples that involve them in their own life in some way, or give examples of things that they know around them to kind of keep them motivated to learn? Is that part of the learning experience within the book before you give the exam questions?
All of that was part of our college text, so we didn't really have to do it for the AP part. But remember, the goal of the students who are taking AP is to pass the exam and get college credit. So the practice that they need to have a lot of practice with the problems. The problems are written in a fashion that's not the same as college. So if they were to just do the college problems, they'd probably not do very well on the AP exam. They have twists and turns in their questions. Their distractors are very, very well made. So following the outline of their problems gives the student a better chance of success.
I also think because it's got to be a college book, we kept all the college problems in the book, and many of them are not student-oriented, but it's an engineering calculus book. So there are proofs in there, and there are engineering problems in there. They all stayed. And the other answer is that most students taking AP, as Mike said, want to pass that exam. They want the credit.
I would think that you'd have to soften some of the approach for the students, because they don't want to get into the heady corollaries and other sorts of issues in math, don't you? Or do you keep it at the same college level? Oh, you do?
We're required to keep it at the same college level, but you can bypass that at the discretion of the instructor. So it's not mandatory that you cover all of that. But then again, if you're trying to get college credit and you do those kinds of things in a college course, you better probably be doing them here.
So the AP exam has calculator active and non-active items, both multiple choice and free response. So how do you address that aspect in your textbook?
Well, we have a technology component in the textbook. We use icons to indicate problems that require technology. In the AP exams and questions, we identify those that require technology, which is exactly what they do on the exam.
And the rest, we left the majority of that is in the teacher's edition, because different schools use different graphing calculators. So, actually at a professional development at the beginning of this week, the teachers liked that. Two teachers in particular who had students who got consistent 4s and 5s didn't teach the technology till the end of the semester. I'm going to say the end of the year before the test.
Now, the slide that's up there now says that the robust student and teacher support is provided by Bedford Freeman Worth. Did you create all of that state-of-art technology and unparalleled teacher support, or did someone else create that?
Sir? I'll let a Bedford representative answer.
It's very much a combination. We solicit key College Board members to help us write the supplements around our author team, so that helps a lot. But we also have our own proprietary platform that's online called Launchpad. So a lot of the product and things that Mike and Kathleen have created can just slip into that platform, if that makes sense. And I wanted to answer one thing about your question. AP students, if you're not familiar with them, are highly motivated. So I don't think you have to worry about the questions being, if they're more college oriented. I mean, if a student's taking AP Calculus, they're pretty intense. So I hope that answers your question. Does anyone have any questions on that?
I have two questions. The first is a follow-up to the first question regarding the review questions. You mentioned that you took things as soon as they were released, and I'm curious about the permissions or the copyright.
No, we never copied one. I read them. Oops, sorry. We never used any released question whatsoever. All the questions are new. All right, brand new. That's what we spent most of the time doing. Writing, answering, vetting, making sure they really worked. There wasn't finding good distractors.
Do I have it right that you saw the questions that were released and then you developed your own
questions?
Yes,
yes. So I wanted to know what kind of problems were used, and that was basically what I did.
For us, it was also a learning experience. We know how to write problems for the college level, and we had to learn for ourselves just how AP is putting these questions together. And we use their released problems as a guide for us to create our own problems.
Thanks. Second question, Mike, you mentioned the color green. Mm-hmm. Was that more of a theme, or did you pick that particular color for a specific reason?
Well, the cover of the book is green. And,
so
green is a soft color. Blues and greens typically work in textbooks.
We had a very imaginative editor as well, and he's the one who said, let's make everything AP green, and we agreed.
He also had the hummingbird on the front cover, if you remember that part.
And that's because hummingbirds move quickly, so you can't see the infinitesimal moves, and because they're very nimble, and you have to be nimble to learn AP Calculus.
So that's an AP theme is the green.
For our textbook.
Oh, just for your textbook.
Just our textbook and for my slides.
Yeah. Okay, so I had a question, two questions. Who created the videos? Was that you folks or was that Bedford? Bedford, okay. And then do the students have to pay extra for the videos, or is that included in the textbook cost?
I believe it's included. Am I right?
It's a school district. Remember, these are high school books, so school districts buy them. But Sarah's got the real answer.
Thanks. I've been in both the college markets and now in the high school, and the way they purchase textbooks in high school is very different than college. They're going to buy upfront for a period of time from 6 to 8 years. So they often buy a book and then package it with the digital for an extra cost. And then, probably from, publisher to publisher, that cost varies. But our books are, let's say, average the cost of a book plus $30 for the digital for 6 years. So that's basically 5 years over the cost of the book. But they will have an ebook embedded in the platform. They have we have items called Learning Curve, which is formative assessment, and videos. All that stuff is built in. So if a district buys it, then students have access to those videos.
Any other questions? I'm being taken back to high school when I ran relays.
All right. She wants to follow up, so.
On a different topic, the reason we picked the hummingbird, this series has legs in this book, and the continuity, it's going to become known in the market as, hey, that's that hummingbird book, and that just kind of resonates and catches. We did a similar thing with the AP statistics book with the flamingo. Now the whole market knows it as the flamingo, and we even nicknamed the flamingo Frappy, which in math terms, would make sense if you were a stats teacher. But there's a lot of reasoning behind the birds, too.
All right, well, let's have a nice round of applause for our presenters here, Mike and Kathleen. And we have just a few minutes left, so I just wanted to open it up like a panel to be able for the audience to ask any question they'd like, and maybe our panel can help answer any of those questions that you might have. So, are there questions?
So this would be for all three of you. As you're writing your textbook, you have all these review questions, case scenarios. What's the process for you? Do you have like one page for content and then you flip over as you think of a case? Or do you write the content and then the case and then the questions? I mean, what's your flow as you're writing?
Who would like to answer that?
I use in my book a lot of legal cases. I didn't point it out because it's particular to the legal field, but I write the material and then go looking for recent cases that reflect the material. I also do a gig at a conference for hospitality lawyers every year that my topic is a review of the top 100 cases from the prior year. I probably review 20, but in a handout do summations with the co-author of the 100 cases. So it then becomes real easy when I get to the textbook to go back through those handouts and find cases that match. But I do the content first and then find the cases.
My situation's entirely different because I'm creating the cases, so it makes sense that while I'm writing the chapter, the cases flow out of the chapter, and I'm thinking about that topic and how it relates, etc. But what I also do, it's important to think about this. I'm keeping a database, an Excel spreadsheet, whatever, of all the cases, all the scenarios, all the activities, so I'm not duplicating. So I keep an inventory, by chapter and label them because after so many months, you can't remember who's on first and what's on second, So you need to know that you're not running over yourself.
Well, we wrote a mathematics book, so we don't really have case studies. But what we do have is in every chapter a true application. So, for example, in one of the chapters, we take data for flow of the river, where it measures the rate of flow on an annual basis. And then the chapter project uses the mathematics of the chapter to estimate the actual volume of water that was flowing. And that's in every chapter.
So you do that before or while you're writing the chapter, or after?
It's usually after the chapter. They're very hard to find.
Other questions? Well, I'll add my own personal comment about here. We're talking about covers and how it works about cover images. I write an oceanography textbook, and of course the cover is very, visually appealing. And so when the production team gets around to choosing the cover, they usually create mock-up covers with 3 different images, and then the whole production team, so all the editors, all the production team, and they include myself, we get to vote, but I only get 1 vote. I don't get like a higher proportion because I'm the author. And invariably, in the 7 editions that I've done, the image I like the best is the one that never gets picked. For whatever reason. Maybe I just have a different eye of things, but a lot of the, the art studio and the editors, they kind of have an eye for perhaps what might really work on a cover versus I just like that image and I think that would look good there. So
you like how they come out?
They do ask me my opinion, and a lot of times they're right. It's like, yeah, that actually, when you actually see it instead of just a PDF file, when you see it actually in your hands, it does have a different effect. So, any last questions? All right, let's have. Okay.
On covers, the first time I signed a book contract, it was about, I would have to say 1969, and I would obviously sign whatever they gave me, but there was just one thing I said, this is a psychology book. I want to have final approval of the cover. It's the only thing I could think of. And they said, okay, you can. And then I went ahead and after I had a contract, I drew what I thought I wanted the cover to be. I drew it. And so, since I had gotten that in the contract, I had to use it. It was the worst cover that anyone could ever come up with. And so it was pure vanity and very, very bad cover.
Well, with that ability to decide also comes the responsibility of whether it's successful or not.
That's right.
Great. Well, let's have a nice round of applause for all our presenters. Thank you so much for attending our session. Thank you.